Hello, Elaine.
Hello, Clarissa. I am so excited that you asked me to come on with you.
Well, you and I talk usually on a monthly basis, and we're Facebook friends and all that jazz. But this conversation is a bit different because I want to talk to Elaine, the entrepreneur and the small business owner. So I'm so excited that you said yes to me when I reached out to you. So you are sitting right now in beautiful St. Martin's,
And
and
yeah, I know, pinch me, right? Pinch
right,
me. Yeah, beautiful. And my husband and I went out for a walk this morning. He said, let's walk down to the fishing village, right? And it's lobster season. So we walked down and the tide's out. So the boats are all sitting in the mud that are in and the
yeah,
dog was with us and there's rose hips and I took 100 pictures and then we got on the beach. I'm like, let's go on the beach. And it's interesting because the north wind, like we're learning these things as we live in this
right,
seaside place that we got to the beach and there was no wind because it was coming from the north and then we're down in the bowl of the beach and I got
right.
beach glass and it's just like I'm just saying pinch me.
Right. And you are really, when I think of stories about unlikely entrepreneurs, and a lot of people might say by me saying an unlikely entrepreneur, that's some sort of derogatory. And it's certainly not, because you
No.
are living your life by design. You have, you came from a corporate world, you raised your family, and now you have created your own life, which has brought you to entrepreneurship. So can you tell us a little bit about, who was Elaine, and kind of what brought you to this life that you have now?
Well, so I'll give you the Coles Notes version. I mean, I went to university, and much like most entrepreneurs, you'll probably get the same story. I didn't do great in university. Like, I did great in high school, really good at memorizing, didn't do great in university. So I was asked to leave by my third year when I wasn't doing great. And my mother said, well, you can't sit home and do nothing.
Mhm.
So she said, go open a bank account. So I went over to CIBC, opened a bank account. While I was there, I said, are you hiring? And she said, well, as a matter of fact, we are. So there I am in my raincoat and my rain boots looking all cute. And I'm like, no resume, nothing. But that was back in the 80s where like you just had to show up and look, like you had your wits about you and you got a great job. So I started in 1986 at CIBC when I asked for a bank account and a job. So I started out as a teller, and from 86 to 98, I worked my way from counting out 20, 40, 60, 81 at the counter to being in the corner office at our Bayside Drive branch as an account manager.
Wow.
And but one of the things that carried me through all that I'm really good at is organizing.
Mhm.
Like my files were organized, and they used to bring me in to organize other new staff who were like a mess, and they would like, oh, you need to sit with Elaine for a while. So one of the skills that sort of, and there's always a thread when you look at entrepreneurs, I think there's a common thread that goes through their life, like whether they're great at tech stuff or great at they were always fixing things like mechanics, right? Even as
Mhm.
kids, like I think of my husband who was always tearing things apart as a kid and made his mother crazy, but now
Mhm.
he's a marine engineer and he spends his whole career putting things together, taking them apart, and that. So I
Right.
think as entrepreneurs, like we have those common threads. So in 86, I left the bank due to all kinds of interesting circumstances. And, some people know my story, but it's pretty interesting. I won't get into it in detail here, but if anybody wants to message me and say, hey, tell me about that.
Yeah.
Um, so in 86 I had two kids under the age of 3 and a husband who worked on a ship, so I ended up leaving that job at the bank. And then we had a third child and I was like, oh, I like this, but geez, I need something for me. And I was,
Mhm.
I needed that something. And I was, I think, brave enough or courageous enough to say, I need more. I need
Right.
more than sitting home and changing diapers. And I just needed more for me. And not everybody needs that, but I needed that. And
Mhm.
so somebody said, well, like, you're really good at organizing. So I went to the internet and Googled organizing, like in, I don't know what year it was, like 2002 or three.
Mhm.
And, and there was like a whole industry. And I'm like, what? There's people like me. And so in 2003, I met up with a friend. We started a company together, and it was just what I needed. I needed somebody to help me get going,
Yeah.
and and we were partners for about a year, and then after that she went her way and I went mine. But that led me to a whole industry where I got into the ecosystem of being a business owner. And I'm
Mhm.
telling you, in the province of New Brunswick, and I have to say, I couldn't live in a better place.
Mhm.
for that. Like, when I look at the CBDC, the women in business, what Oasis is doing, not just, and I see that there's a lot of women around entrepreneurship there. The support in this province got me where I am.
Yeah.
But also having people like you, Clarissa, who identify and see people and then sort of bring them in, right? You see the
Right.
entrepreneurs that have they have that little spark, right? That they
Mhm.
want to like go, ooh, yeah, I think I can do this because I have a skill, I have a talent, I have some knowledge, and I want to turn it into a business. Doesn't mean you're a good business person. It
Right.
means you're good
Yeah.
at your craft, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what the province of New Brunswick does that's really great is they take the gaps and they help us fill them.
Right. And
And
it's
so
so
that's sort
important.
of my little bit of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important to tell that story behind the business, because so often we just look at a small business owner and we just automatically think, oh, it was sheer luck, or, oh, I could never do that. And, so many people are the talent behind the business, right? So you look at some of our graduates at NBCC, whether they're graduating from respiratory therapy or LPN or early childhood education, they're the talent behind the business. So, those business skills, come afterwards, right? As
Exactly. But there has to be a desire there. And I think there's that sort of, we have this skill, talent, or knowledge. And we have this desire, right? This deep-seated need to share that with others. So for me, like I saw what organizing did in my own life. And I have 3 children. At the time, our middle child was diagnosed with autism. It was Asperger's at the time, but now it's considered autism, and we needed to be organized for so many reasons. And so I pulled out my organizer hat and started looking at my own life, like how can we help him with the skills that I have, and then how can we bring in people to help us. And so over the years, it was actually a gift, right? So
Mm,
his diagnosis changed our family in so many wonderful, profound
right.
ways.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I was able to put on my organizer hat, and then I was like, wait, that is an industry, but how do I turn it into a business? So
Right.
the province supported me so much in like going to conferences. So I attended conferences from in Canada. So in the Professional Organizers of Canada, I have my trained professional organizer designation. Got that in 2008, and so I have the highest designation in the country. Then I started going to American conferences, and then Kim Eagles and I created a fabulous product back in 2007-8, and we went to a conference in Reno, Nevada, and we won best technology. Like these two
Wow.
little girls from New Brunswick, Canada,
Yeah.
and so the whole world of organizing was looking at us.
Yes.
Like it was
Yeah.
so great. We wouldn't have gotten there
Yeah.
without the support that we had. I spoke at a conference in South Africa in
Wow.
2008. I spoke in Vancouver the same year. Like it was amazing, but the province helped. They helped because when you're a speaker, like there's support
Hmm.
there. And so all
Yeah.
of those things then kept moving me up in my industry. And as you moved up, the education that I received, right? And then I was like, oh, well, I need to know more about bookkeeping and accounting, and I need to know more about marketing. And there
Hmm.
just always seemed to be, and you said something about luck, but I think when you're doing the work and you're showing up, I think the luck is that there's the things in
Right.
front of you.
Yeah.
And if you're open,
Yeah.
you're going to see the opportunities that are there.
Yeah. And I think that, as you talk, and I kind of picture, there's building blocks, right? And, it's like kind of like you mentioned the beach, but it's kind of like being at a river and, you're trying to cross the river and you're jumping from rock to rock to rock to rock to get you to higher ground, or to, to not be in the water. And I think that you took advantage of those building blocks as you come up, because did you always have your eye at, were you just a let's do this and it'll get us to this, or did you always have your eye on a further destination into the future?
That's a great question, Clarissa. And so I'm kind of at a point in my life where I'm doing a lot of self-reflection. Like I'm looking at my business now. I'm in my third act. I'm 55, and I'm thinking, how do I do this now as I move into this different phase of my life, right? And so when I look back, so the first 17 years of my business, I was in my second act, and I was in hustle, and I was hustling hard, right? And
Mhm.
so for me, I was looking at people like Peter Walsh, who was like, a US well, he's from Australia, but a TV star. And here's like the pinnacle of organizing. So when I was doing that, I was like, those were the people I was looking at. And so they were like my North Star. I was like, I
Mhm.
want to be like him, because I wanted, to be on TV, which I ended up doing from 2012 to 16.
Mhm.
So those were like things, but they always were external things.
Mhm.
Somebody else is doing this, I want to get to that. So for me, it was like the horse and the carrot. I was always chasing the carrot.
Right.
And I almost burnt myself out. Well, probably did many times over those
Mhm.
17 years. And so lately, I've become very introspective, and it's like,
Mhm.
okay, what is that inner thing that fuels me? And so that inner light, that inner energy, shows up differently.
Right.
Right? It shows up differently in the person as you meet them. So people that meet me now that met me 10 years ago might go, wow, her energy is kind of different. And it is, because
Right.
it's moving more inward. And so when the question that you ask is, what am I following? Now I'm following breadcrumbs. Like
Right.
I'm really following breadcrumbs. Like what is that next thing that interests me, that lights a spark, that I'm really fascinated and curious. So I'm following breadcrumbs and curiosities that that are those inner parts of me. And as an entrepreneur, like I am like, I feel like I'm not like swimming in different waters here. This is
Mhm.
so different for me, but it feels peaceful, it feels joyful, it feels more in alignment. it's
Right.
it's just it's so different, Clarissa. Like
Yeah.
there are days when I don't understand, and I'm like confused, and I'm like, oh, I'm a little anxious because I don't know, right? I'm not chasing that outside thing anymore.
Right. And that's so interesting because, when you and I met, you came on as an Oasis mentor when we first launched in St. John, and then you started providing us with some professional development around, reclaiming time. And
Yeah.
anyone who knows me, and if they've been in the same room as you and I together, they all know that, the day that I attended your workshop and I went out to the car and cried because I realized that my schedule and my calendar, I had let it kind of run away from me, and I was trying to reclaim some of that and be introspective myself. At the time, you really talked about how your North Star at the time, or your filter, was freedom. Would you and everything you did kind of went around that filter of freedom? Is that still something that's very special to you? That goal of freedom?
Well, interesting that you ask. So thankfully, you brought me in May, I think it was. I was supposed to do another one of these
Mhm.
in-person sessions, and you're like, no, because of COVID, we're going to go virtual. I'm like, what? so so you're like, no, Elaine, you're doing a Zoom class.
Yeah.
So, anyways, thank you for that, for pushing me
I
outside
remember we
my.
even practiced it. We had to practice Zoom.
Right, because I'm a little
Yeah.
anal about things like that. Right, because for me the thing is, if I show up and it doesn't work, then I've wasted people's time, and that's really important to me. Right, is
Right.
the value of
Right.
people's time. So I redid my values that day. I think I did it around then, and it changed. I'm like, what? So it's
Wow.
peace. It's moved from freedom to peace. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. So then I started now. It's like, if anybody who's attended my session, they know the filter, right? And it's
Right.
pouring through, and that through the filter is peace now. So
Yeah.
does this activity bring peace or take away peace?
Mhm.
Anyways, I
That's
was
just so
surprised too.
it's so interesting, right? Because mine changes as well. It's such an interesting perspective and exercise. And if anyone here ever gets you to do that exercise with them, they will be forever grateful, because I know it has changed my life. Um, what do you think now, looking back on your years, way back to being in your raincoat and rubber boots at the bank, opening the account? Has been the biggest lesson that you've learned along the way?
Oh, I have a lot. I sometimes I say, like, do I have to learn every lesson?
I know. Yeah.
Could I not just like bypass one, and somebody says, "Hey, Lane, this
Yeah.
this might be a good
What is
idea."
it? Is it Oprah? Oprah said that, like, "Oh Lord, don't teach me nothing today," right? For
Yeah,
lessons.
kind of like that. Yeah, so I'm like the queen of lessons. But here's the other part of it, is because I'm fearless. I think, and my husband will say, yeah, she scares us sometimes, because I will
Mhm.
try things. and I have failed. I have failed very publicly, and I have failed in very large ways in business, and that's okay, right?
Mhm.
Because like somebody has to do that, right? That's what entrepreneurs do, and so I'm a risk taker, and so it's interesting. It's not the thing that somebody told me to do. It was the thing that somebody told me not to do
Okay.
that that has stayed with me. So more than once in my life, I have been told to tone it down, stop wearing those bright clothes. You might want to change your accent.
Mm.
Um, Missy, you're just a little too much.
Mhm.
And so more than once, Clarissa, and like even back to the bank, the manager had someone take me out to lunch, a woman, to mentor me to say, you just need to tone it down. And I thought, oh, okay, what am I doing wrong? I was being me. I
Mhm.
went on a trade mission to Boston. This is hilarious. And the guy that was mentoring me from Boston said, I needed to get rid of my accent. Okay. He eats salty lobster, right? And
Mhm.
so he was coaching me to get rid of my accent. So it's like this, I'm from where I'm from. This is how I sound.
Yeah.
And don't wear the bright clothes, get rid of this, your hair's a little too flippy, you might want to change your website and tone it down. And that was the advice. Was it rubbed up against me. And
Mhm.
over the years, it's like, you know what, if you have a problem with me, that's your issue. And
Right.
so I'm learning as I age that I care less about that. Like
Mhm.
before, back in the bank, that probably would have bothered me for a very long time,
Yeah.
but now it bothers me far less.
Yeah. But how important then that lesson, and you kind of shook it off. I know it, like you said, it probably bothered you, but when we look at um, as entrepreneurs and small business owners, and that personal branding that goes along with that, um, we're not everyone's going to be everyone's cup of tea. But how do you find now that when you stay true to yourself, and you said, well, if you don't like me, that's okay. This is who I am. How important was that staying with that personal brand that you had built?
Well, I think that there's this authenticity and alignment,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
so as I've grown, I've realized that the more I am me, because this is my secret sauce, and
Mhm.
every entrepreneur has their secret sauce. It is the thing that makes them compelling and brings your customers back, right?
Yeah.
It draws people to you. And I always say people buy from people, not from businesses. Like they buy from the person who's standing there, the interesting, authentic. I'm just trying to think of all the awesome words, all the things that make them awesome
Right.
is why we buy, is why people come back. People come back to Elaine because of this, right? And my
Mhm.
enthusiasm and my joy. And if that's rubbing you the wrong way, then carry on and go hire somebody else. But if you want this, if you want somebody who's going to be, a champion, a cheerleader, excited, more excited than you sometimes, or maybe, over the top excited, whatever, then that's what I want people to come to me for. Like,
Right.
don't come to me and ask me to be different. And
Right.
I think that's important for entrepreneurs, is to really figure out who they are. And that's back to those values that we talked about
Mhm.
in the workshop, Clarissa, right?
Mhm.
When you reclaim your time, I'm not spending my time trying to be somebody who I'm not.
Right. Yeah.
And so that is liberating.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it kind of leads to what I wanted to touch on. We're moving into a new year. It looks like, 2020 has been, some would call it a wash. I mean, we've learned great lessons in 2020. We've learned how to work different. We've looked, some of us have learned how to work smarter, um, and use more technology based. And but there's some sad things that have happened as well.
Yeah.
Um, but we're moving into a new year, and because some people may know you best as that organizing person, or the person to help reclaim time, and help us learn about that. What are your suggestions for people who are sitting on this date, and they're saying, I want to start the new year off different? What do I do? Do you have any tips for them?
Well, good question. So for myself, what I've been doing recently is I pulled out my day timer, which I started, of course, last year. And and so I opened the front page, and I had gone to a winter solstice ceremony with a bunch of amazing people. And Joanna Killen, who is among other things, very artistic. She drew up little cards for us all. And the card that I drew, and she just put them on a pile by this amazing tree. We went to have this ceremony, was be open to miracles big and small in 2020.
Wow.
Right. And so looking back, right, because I didn't know what that was going to mean for the year. And so looking back, and I look at like, wow, this was a year of big and small miracles. And I look back through the things that I had planned to do this year, and it made me think that this year wasn't about doing, it was about being. How do I want to be? Because with all that, everything that's happening around us, the world is changed forever. We can't go back. You can't stuff the genie back in the bottle. So everything has changed. We've lost people. Businesses are closing. It is what it is. There are things that we can't change, but what we can change is how we show up, how we are being, right? And so today, when I went for my walk, I did a little Facebook post, and it's like, for my mental health, I need to walk daily.
Mhm.
I need to be with the people I love. Jamie and I started the day playing cribbage and rummy 500. I don't know why, because I always lose, but it's fun, right?
Mm.
So we're finding a different rhythm with each other, which is very interesting. We're out here in St. Martin's. My children are at our house. My parents are at the house. They're all isolated in different parts of the house. And it's like, I could be really upset and sad, and I do have anxiety and I have angst over all this, but how do I want to be during all this? So as you finish off, so here we are, we're almost at the end of November. We have November, December, and we're into a new year. It's like, take some time, because everybody's so hard, working in their business. I think it's time to work on your business.
Yeah.
And then maybe work on your life. And my friend, good friend, and I'm dropping names like crazy here, I love it, Crystal Seeberger, who's like a great friend, and we, she said, you know what, Elaine, time management is working in your business. Reclaiming time is working on your business, on your life.
Yeah.
So when you reclaim your time, you're working on you and what's important. And I think if people want to do their little audit, which is fantastic, like, go back and look through your calendar for the year and say, what did I love? What didn't I love? What do I want to continue in 2021? Pick a word of the year. Like, it's simple. It's like, you stop, you hit the reset button, and you go, okay, what am I keeping? What am I getting rid of?
Yeah.
That's a big answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, you wanted
Oh,
like
no,
one thing,
no,
but
and great advice. And it's been a couple of years now that I've started picking a word of the year, and I was thinking about that. Normally by this time I have my word for the next year, and I'm going through that exercise right now. Do I keep the same theme that I had in 2020, and do I just have like a 2.0 after it, or do I come up? So I'm going through that exercise right now, and it is a really great exercise to do. I know some people might think it sounds frou-frou, or kind of out there, but it really does help ground you when it comes to looking at like you say, how you want to be and what you want to do. So what's next for Elaine? And as we head into 2021, what's next for you?
what's next for me? Well, interesting. So I'm working with a business coach right now, and thankfully for the province, right? So I have some opportunities. So I'm working with a business coach right now. And because I've had so many calls to do the reclaiming time, like out of the blue, people are like, can you speak to our group? And, can you do a Zoom call? And I'm like, okay. And I did a Zoom call the other day. I'm so proud of myself, really. I mean, you got to have the small wins. There were 24 people, and all I saw were blanks and their names. Like, and how much of a connector I am. I need to see that first Zoom class I did. I was like, you got to have your cameras on, everybody. And Jillian, my daughter, said, no, you can't ask them to have their camera on. And I'm like, okay. So nobody had their camera on. The girl that was moderating it was sending questions through, and it was like, wow, it worked. I felt like I connected with them, energetically. The questions were great, and it was awesome. So I think for me, I think I need to go back to my roots, but in a different way. Like, the organizing is such a part of me, but I want to help people organize their time so that they can reclaim, and they can experience, like, and their life might be good, everything's good, but they want to take it up a notch. So how do you do that? Like, you really look at your time, you look at your calendar, and are the things I'm putting into my calendar, are they filling me up? Are they helping the world, right? Or am
Yeah.
I just feeling yucky, like, when I'm scrolling on the internet? Because I'm working on that. I've got alerts on my phone when I'm, on a certain time limit and all those things. Like, because you can get sucked into all that very easily and not using your time for things that fill you up instead of
Yeah.
drain you. So my new year, that's what I'm looking at. Working with my coach, getting really clear on what it is that I want to offer, that will fill me up and that will fill my clients up. And I'm kind of, not kind of, I'm quite excited.
And you have such a gift for that. So that makes me so happy to know that you're going to be able to help more people like you helped me, like you've helped, so many in the Oasis program, just kind of decipher what are some things, little or big to do to kind of, start out on that journey to reclaim. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. I know you and I can chat forever
Days,
on
we
a
could chat
whole
for
lot of
days.
topics. But I hope you have a very happy holiday season, and hope you stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, Clarissa. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and keep watching Clarissa and NBC Oasis and everything that they're doing, because they're
Thank you.